Imagine this. You're standing in a Four Seasons ballroom, surrounded by 300 millionaires at your own son's wedding, and your father points at you and announces, "This is the family embarrassment we're stuck with." What would you do to escape that humiliation? For 25 years, I was the Dalton family failure. The teen mom who chose tech over real estate, the daughter without an MBA who played with computers while my Harvard-educated brother ran the family empire. My father made sure every investor in Boston knew I was a disappointment. He even sent emails warning them about my amateur ventures. What he didn't know was that I'd been quietly building something under a corporate veil, something worth $2.3 billion, and his biggest business partner was about to recognize me as the mysterious buyer who'd been shaking up Silicon Valley. I'm Wendy Dalton, 42 years old, and this is the story of how my father's public humiliation became his $500 million mistake. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. My name is Wendy Dalton, and this is the story of how my father's cruelest moment became his most expensive mistake. The Dalton family built their real estate empire over 3 generations, accumulating a portfolio worth roughly $500 million by the time I was born. My father, Robert Dalton, never let anyone forget it. Every introduction started the same way. Robert Dalton of the Dalton Properties Empire. He had 2 children, but only one heir, at least in his mind. My younger brother Marcus came into the world with advantages I never had. While I was working 3 jobs to pay for community college as a single mother at 18, Marcus was being groomed at Phillips Exeter. When I was debugging code at 3 a.m. for my startup, he was networking at the Harvard Club. His MBA from Harvard Business School hung in our father's office before it ever graced Marcus's own wall. Marcus is the future of the Dalton Empire, my father would tell anyone who'd listen at those endless charity galas and country club dinners. He understands what it takes to maintain a legacy. And me? I was the cautionary tale. My daughter Wendy, she's in computers, he'd say with a dismissive wave, as if I'd joined a cult rather than founded a tech company. The unspoken rest of that sentence hung in the air. The one who got pregnant in high school, the one without the Ivy League pedigree, the one who chose some internet thing over real estate. Marcus drove a Bentley Continental GT, a graduation gift from father. I drove a Tesla Model 3 that I'd paid for myself. At family events, he sat at our father's right hand. I sat wherever there was room. My little startup had 200 employees, but you'd never know it from the way my family talked about it. 3 months before the wedding that would change everything, my son James graduated from Johns Hopkins Medical School, 4th in his class. He'd done it without a penny from his grandfather, though you wouldn't know that from the announcement my father sent to his business associates. The Dalton family is proud to announce that James Dalton, grandson of Robert Dalton, has graduated from Johns Hopkins, the email read. No mention of the single mother who'd worked 18-hour days to pay for his education. When James decided to get married right after graduation, I wrote a check for $327,000 to cover the entire wedding. Every orchid in the Four Seasons ballroom, every bottle of Dom Perignon, every hand-calligraphed invitation, I paid for it all. But the invitation that went out to 300 of Boston's elite read, "Robert Dalton cordially invites you to celebrate the marriage of his grandson." 2 weeks before the wedding, my assistant forwarded me an email. Someone in my father's circle had blind copied her on a message he'd sent to the extended family. Despite Wendy's situation, "We're managing to put together something respectable for James," he'd written. "I've made sure the right people will attend." My situation. As if being a self-made CEO was some kind of disability. I saved that email in a folder labeled Legal. I'd been saving things in that folder for years, never quite sure why. Call it instinct. The morning of the wedding, I stood in my closet, looking at 2 dresses. The Oscar de la Renta haute couture I'd bought for the occasion, and a simple Dior dress from 3 seasons ago. I chose the Dior. Let them underestimate me one more time. 3 months earlier, the financial press had gone into overdrive. A mysterious buyer operating through a Delaware C corporation called Nexus Holdings had acquired 6 companies in rapid succession. Total value $2.3 billion. All cash deals. The Wall Street Journal called it the phantom buyer. Forbes ran a piece titled, "Who's Behind the Silicon Valley Shopping Spree?" TechCrunch speculated about Chinese investors, Saudi wealth funds, even secret Apple acquisitions. They were all wrong. I sat in my office watching the speculation on CNBC while Sarah Chen, managing partner at Chen, Williams and Associates, organized the paperwork for our next acquisition. "You should go public with this, Wendy," Sarah said, not for the first time. "The board is ready to announce you as CEO. This secrecy isn't necessary anymore." "Not yet," I told her, eyes on the screen where analysts debated Nexus's next move. "The timing isn't right." "When will it be?" I thought about the email in my legal folder, about 25 years of being introduced as an embarrassment, about my son getting married in a few months. "I'll know it when I see it." What the press didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that one of those 6 companies was TechSource International, the primary supplier for Dalton Properties' smart home division. My brother Marcus's entire modernization initiative depended on them. I hadn't targeted him. That would be petty. I'd simply bought an undervalued company that happened to control 73% of his supply chain. The fact that it gave me leverage over the family business that had excluded me? Let's call that serendipity. Sarah locked the SEC filings in her briefcase. "These go public whenever you say the word." Soon, I thought. Very soon. The Four Seasons ballroom could hold 500 guests. We had 300, which meant everyone could see everyone else. Exactly the kind of intimate grandeur my father preferred. Baccarat crystal chandeliers cast perfect light on the Hermès and Chanel, adorning Boston's elite. I arrived alone, as always. The seating chart, displayed on a gold easel, told me everything I needed to know about my place in the family hierarchy. Table 1, Robert Dalton, Marcus Dalton, and his wife. Table 2, the Hammonds, Richard Hammond of Hammond Industries and his family. Tables 3 through 11, various VIPs, business partners, and important relatives. Table 12, additional family. Not family, not VIP, just additional. I took my seat between a second cousin who sold insurance and my father's ancient aunt, who spent the entire cocktail hour asking why I wasn't remarried yet. From table 12, I had a perfect view of the high table where my father held court, Marcus at his right hand like a crown prince. Richard Hammond caught my eye from table 2 and nodded. We'd never met, but something in his expression suggested recognition. I filed that away. My father stood up, champagne flute in hand, and the room fell silent. He had that effect on people, commanded attention like it was his birthright. "Before we celebrate the union of my grandson James and his beautiful bride," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "I want to take a moment to speak about family, about legacy, about what it means to be a Dalton." Marcus straightened in his chair, knowing this speech was as much about him as it was about James. Then my father pointed directly at me. "Let me introduce you all to my children," my father said, his gesture sweeping from the high table to my corner. "Most of you know Marcus, Harvard MBA, the future of Dalton Properties. He's increased our portfolio by 30% in just 5 years. A true Dalton." Polite applause rippled through the room. Marcus stood briefly, acknowledging the recognition with practiced humility. "And then," my father continued, his finger still pointed at me, "there's Wendy." The pause stretched just long enough to be uncomfortable. "She's here." A few nervous chuckles emerged from the crowd. I kept my face neutral, counting the bubbles rising in my untouched champagne. "The family embarrassment we're stuck with," he added with a theatrical sigh that drew bigger laughs. "Every family has one, don't they?" The laughter spread through the room like wildfire. 300 people, I counted. 300 people laughing at a father's casual cruelty. Someone from table 5 called out, "At least she showed up." More laughter. My son James started to rise from his seat at the head table, his face flushed with anger. I caught his eye and shook my head slightly. "Not yet. She runs some internet thing," my father continued, warming to his audience. "No MBA, no proper education, single mother at 18, but family is family, even the disappointing ones. We don't get to choose them, do we?" Aunt Margaret's voice carried from table 6. "Poor Robert, you tried so hard with both of them." I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The sound cut through the laughter. For a moment, the room thought I was about to leave. I remained standing, silent, my eyes locked on my father's. My father misread my standing as surrender. His smile widened. "Oh, don't leave, Wendy. I'm not done embarrassing you yet." The room laughed again, though some of the laughter sounded uncomfortable now. "I was just about to tell everyone about your latest venture. What do you call it? Some app? Some website?" "It's a technology company, Dad," I said quietly, my voice carrying in the sudden hush. "Technology company," he repeated mockingly. "That's what they all say these days, isn't it? Everyone's a CEO of something. Marcus here runs real businesses, real estate, real assets, things you can touch, things that matter." "Your Uncle Marcus handles actual money," he continued, gesturing to my brother. 50 million in revenue last year alone. Whatever Wendy does." He waved his hand dismissively. "Well, let's just say she won't be buying any buildings anytime soon." "Robert, perhaps," someone started to say. "A toast," my father interrupted, raising his glass high. "To the Daltons who matter, to Marcus, who carries our legacy, to James, who despite his mother's circumstances, has made something of himself, and to those who marry into success rather than earning it." I watched my son's knuckles go white as he gripped his champagne flute. His new wife whispered something in his ear, probably trying to calm him. "Sit down, Wendy," my father commanded. "You're making a scene." I remained standing. "Am I?" That's when Richard Hammond rose from table 2, his movement sharp enough to draw everyone's attention. "Excuse me, Robert," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "I need to clarify something." Before Richard could continue, James stood up at the head table, his voice shaking with controlled anger. "Grandfather, my mother's company is successful, more successful than you." "Success is relative, son," my father cut him off with a patronizing laugh. "Your mother runs a small operation. It's admirable in its way, like a child's lemonade stand is admirable, but let's not confuse it with real business." "Real business?" James's voice grew stronger. "Do you even know what she—" "I know she couldn't afford this wedding without my help," my father lied smoothly. "I know she drives a Tesla while your Uncle Marcus drives a Bentley. I know she lives in a suburban house while we own half of Back Bay. These are facts, James. Numbers don't lie." Marcus finally spoke up from his throne at the high table. "James, your grandfather is just trying to give perspective. The tech bubble makes everyone think they're the next Steve Jobs. But real wealth, generational wealth, comes from real assets." "Exactly," my father agreed. "Your Uncle Marcus understands. He manages a real empire. Your mother manages— what? A website? Some engineers in hoodies?" The room had gone completely silent except for the soft clink of crystal as someone nervously set down their glass. My son's face had gone from red to pale. "You don't know anything about her company." "I know enough," my father said with finality. "Now sit down, both of you. This is a wedding, not a shareholders' meeting." But Richard Hammond remained standing, and now he was pulling out his phone. "Actually, Robert," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the ballroom, "I think this is exactly the right time for a shareholders' meeting. If you've ever been the black sheep in your family, the one who didn't follow the traditional path, I want you to know, your worth isn't determined by their approval." Type "I know my worth" in the comments if you've ever felt invisible at your own family gathering. And please, share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Richard Hammond held his phone up, the Bloomberg app clearly visible on the screen. I need to ask, he said, looking directly at me. You're Wendy Dalton? The Wendy Dalton? My father laughed, but it sounded forced now. Richard, what are you talking about? I'm talking about Nexus Holdings, Richard said, his voice gaining volume. The phantom buyer, the one who's been acquiring companies left and right, including mine as of last week. Murmurs rippled through the room. Several people pulled out their phones. You're confused, my father said, his confidence wavering. My daughter doesn't even know what Nexus Holdings is. Your daughter, Richard said slowly, just paid me $400 million in cash for Hammond Industries. The contracts were signed 5 days ago. The murmurs turned to gasps. Someone at table 3 was frantically typing on their phone. That's impossible, Marcus stood up, his face flushed. That's absolutely impossible. It's on Bloomberg right now, Richard said, turning his phone toward the room. Nexus Holdings reveals CEO, Wendy Dalton. Net worth, $2.3 billion. My father's face went from red to white in 3 seconds. His champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the silent ballroom. This is some kind of joke, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Some kind of mistake. No mistake, Richard said. I spent 3 months negotiating with her team. The woman you just called an embarrassment now owns 6 major companies, including mine. And if I'm not mistaken, he looked at Marcus, including your primary supplier. 300 pairs of eyes turned to look at me. I remained standing, silent, watching my father's world begin to crack. She just bought my company last week, Richard repeated, louder now for those in the back. $400 million, all cash, one of 6 acquisitions in the last 3 months. The ballroom erupted. Everyone was on their phones now, searching, confirming, gasping at what they found. It's true, someone called out from table 7. Forbes has it, Business Insider has it, it's everywhere. Nexus Holdings is the phantom buyer everyone's been talking about, another voice added. The one nobody could identify. My father gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. There must be another Wendy Dalton. This is impossible. My daughter couldn't afford this wedding without my help. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, I paid for this wedding, every penny of it, $327,000. You're lying, he spat. The wedding planner, who'd been standing by the service door, stepped forward nervously. Actually, Mr. Dalton, she's right. Ms. Dalton paid in full 3 months ago. I have the receipts. Marcus was scrolling frantically through his phone. This can't be real. I would know. Someone would have told me. Told you what? Richard asked. That your sister, the one your father just humiliated in front of everyone, is worth more than your entire family combined? The Bloomberg article says she's been operating under the radar for 20 years, someone read from their phone. Built her first company at 22, sold it for $50 million at 28, reinvested everything. My father's face had gone gray. Stop, he said weakly. Just stop. But the truth had momentum now, and nothing could stop it. This is a misunderstanding, my father said, his voice regaining some strength through sheer desperation. There must be another Wendy Dalton. My daughter runs a small tech company. She drives a Tesla, for God's sake. She lives in Brookline, not Back Bay. He turned to me, his eyes pleading and commanding at once. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them the truth. I remained silent. This is ridiculous, Marcus interjected, his Harvard MBA confidence cracking. I know every major player in Boston business. I would know if my own sister was… He couldn't even finish the sentence. Would you? I asked quietly. When was the last time you asked about my company? When was the last time any of you asked? Your little startup? My father scoffed, grasping at straws. Your internet thing? My little startup was acquired 8 years ago, I said. I've been building something else since then. But you never asked, so I never told. This is impossible, my father repeated like a mantra. Richard, someone is playing a joke. My daughter doesn't have that kind of money. She can't. Robert, Richard said, almost pitying now. I've seen the contracts. I've met with her legal team. Hell, I've seen the wire transfer. Your daughter bought my company. The door to the ballroom opened, and Sarah Chen walked in, pulling a leather briefcase behind her. Every head turned to watch her cross the room. My father's eyes widened. Who is that? What is this? That, I said, is my attorney, Sarah Chen, managing partner at Chen Williams and Associates. Several lawyers in the room recognized her immediately. Their whispers confirmed what my father feared most. This was real. Anyone can claim anything, my father said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. Anyone can hire an actress, create fake websites, spread rumors. I demand proof, real proof. I looked at him for a long moment. 25 years of dismissal, of public humiliation, of being introduced as a disappointment, all leading to this moment. You want proof? I asked. Sarah, would you come here, please? Sarah walked through the silent crowd, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She set her briefcase on table 12, the overflow table, the afterthought table, and opened it with deliberate precision. My father actually laughed, though it sounded hollow. What is this? Some kind of performance? Did you hire an actress to play a lawyer? Pathetic, Wendy, this is pathetic. Mr. Chen isn't an actress, said a voice from table 4. She represented my company in a merger last year. She's also on the board of the Boston Bar Association, added another voice. Sarah pulled out a folder marked SEC filings, confidential until released. Mr. Dalton, Sarah said, her voice professionally neutral. I represent Nexus Holdings and its CEO, Ms. Wendy Dalton. These are the official SEC filings, made public as of yesterday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. She laid the documents on the table. Several people moved closer to see. These can be verified by anyone with access to the SEC database, Sarah continued. The acquisition of Hammond Industries, TechSource International, Meridian Software, Apex Solutions, ClearPath Systems, and Innovate Partners. Total value, $2.3 billion. My father stared at the papers like they might bite him. Forged. They have to be forged. The SEC doesn't file forgeries, Mr. Dalton, Sarah said simply. 3 executives from different companies surrounded the documents Sarah had laid out. One of them, the CEO of a Boston financial firm, put on his reading glasses and examined the papers carefully. These are legitimate, he announced. I know this filing format. These are real SEC documents. Another executive was on his phone with someone. I have my assistant checking the SEC database right now, he said. Then, after a pause, it's confirmed. Nexus Holdings CEO Wendy Dalton. It's all there. The signatures, the notary seals, the filing numbers, everything is authentic, the first executive continued. Robert, your daughter really is the phantom buyer. My father stumbled backward, catching himself on Marcus's chair. But she never said anything, Marcus protested weakly. Why wouldn't she tell us? Tell you? I asked. When? During the family dinners I wasn't invited to? During the business meetings where I was told I wouldn't understand the real business? Or maybe during tonight's speech somewhere between embarrassment and disappointment? The Wall Street Journal article from last month. Someone at table 5 was reading from their phone. It says Nexus targeted strategic acquisitions in the tech supply chain. Wait. They looked up at Marcus. Don't you use TechSource for all your smart home systems? Marcus's face went pale as he pulled out his phone, frantically searching. No, 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 no. What is it? My father demanded. TechSource, Marcus said, his voice hollow. They supply 60% of our 73% as of Tuesday, I corrected, when we completed the integration with Meridian Software. The room was absolutely silent. Marcus looked like he might be sick. You targeted me? He whispered. Your own brother? I didn't target anyone, I said calmly. I bought undervalued assets with strong fundamentals and growth potential. The fact that you built your entire modernization initiative on a single supplier? That's just poor risk management, Marcus. They taught you about diversification at Harvard, didn't they? Someone at table 8 had pulled up more information. Jesus Christ, TechSource's new parent company controls the entire eastern seaboard supply chain for smart home technology. Which means, another voice added, doing the math, she effectively controls whether Dalton Properties can complete its $200 million smart building project. Marcus was typing furiously on his phone. This can't be legal. This is corporate sabotage. This is business, I interrupted. The same kind of business Dad's been conducting for 40 years. Leverage, positioning, strategic advantage. Isn't that right, Dad? My father hadn't moved. He stood frozen, staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You planned this, he said finally. You've been planning this. I've been building a business, I corrected, for 20 years while you were telling everyone I was playing with computers, while you were introducing Marcus as the future and me as the failure. I was building. The contracts, Marcus said suddenly, looking up from his phone. Our contracts with TechSource run for another 2 years. They do, I agreed, and Nexus will honor them. We're not in the business of breaking contracts. Of course, when they come up for renewal. I shrugged. The implications hung in the air. Without TechSource, Dalton Properties would lose its competitive edge in the smart building market. The $200 million project would fail. The company would lose millions. All because my father had put all his eggs in one basket, and I now owned the basket. Sarah reached into her briefcase again, pulling out another folder. This one was marked Correspondence. Ms. Dalton, she said formally, should I proceed with the additional documentation? I nodded. 2 months ago, Sarah announced to the room, Mr. Robert Dalton sent emails to 47 investors and business associates in the greater Boston area. My father's face went white. What are you talking about? Sarah pulled out a printed email and began to read. Dear colleagues, I feel it's my duty to warn you that my daughter, Wendy Dalton, may approach you with investment opportunities. Despite sharing the Dalton name, she lacks basic business education and has no formal MBA training. I apologize in advance for any amateur ventures she may present to you. Please direct any serious investment inquiries to my son Marcus, who has the proper credentials and understanding of real business. The room gasped collectively. You sent this? Someone asked my father, incredulous. Sarah continued. This email was forwarded to Nexus Holdings' board of directors by 3 separate recipients who found it troubling. Every investor in Silicon Valley got that email, I said quietly, including the 12 who sit on my board. You tried to sabotage your own daughter? Richard Hammond sounded disgusted. My father's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. There's more, Sarah said, pulling out another paper. This one was sent last week, 3 days before the wedding. Quote, keep Wendy away from the important guests. She'll embarrass us with her presence. Make sure she's seated where she can't bother the real business people. That email went to 47 people, I said, all of whom are in this room right now. The silence was deafening. When my board saw that email, I continued, they found it illuminating. They asked me if this was typical behavior from my father. I told them it was. Sarah pulled out another document. The board of Nexus Holdings conducted a review of Robert Dalton's business practices following receipt of these emails. Their findings were interesting. What review? My father demanded. You had no right. Public records, Mr. Dalton, Sarah interrupted. Court filings, business registrations, complaint records, all public. The pattern they found was concerning. 17 former business partners who reported similar tactics. Family members cut out of deals. A brother who moved to London after you, quote, destroyed his reputation in Boston. Aunt Eleanor, my father's sister, stood up at table 6. That's why Thomas left? You told us he was unstable. The board's conclusion, Sarah continued, reading from the document. was that Robert Dalton represents a reputational risk to any organization he's involved with. They recommended accelerating certain acquisitions to minimize exposure. You mean, someone said slowly, they bought those companies specifically because a full investigation showed that Robert Dalton's business empire was built on manipulation and family betrayal, Sarah finished. The board felt that anyone who would sabotage his own daughter's career would have no qualms about betraying business partners. That's slander, Marcus shouted. Marcus. It's documented fact, Sarah replied calmly. Every claim is supported by public records and sworn affidavits. My father sank into a chair, his legs no longer able to support him. The king of Boston real estate, the man who commanded every room he entered, looked small and old. They knew, he whispered. Your board knew who I was to you? They knew exactly who you were, I confirmed. Richard Hammond, who had been quietly conferring with someone on his phone, looked up with sudden understanding. Robert, wait, he said. Aren't you on the board of Children's Hospital, the capital campaign chair? My father nodded mutely. The one that just received a $50 million pledge from… Richard trailed off, looking at me. From Nexus Holdings? The room stirred with new energy. Several board members from various charities were now paying very close attention. That's the largest single donation in the hospital's history, someone said. The new pediatric wing depends on it. The donation is under review, I said simply. The hospital's development director, who was sitting at table 9, stood up quickly. Ms. Dalton, please, the children. The donation will be honored, I assured her. Nexus Holdings keeps its commitments. However, we do require that our partner organizations share our values of integrity and respect. Board members who publicly humiliate family members, who sabotage their own children's careers, who engage in systematic emotional abuse, well, they don't align with our corporate values. You're blackmailing me? My father said, finding his voice again. I'm stating our corporate policy, I replied. We don't associate with individuals who engage in documented patterns of abuse. It's bad for our brand. She's right, the development director said slowly. If this becomes public, if donors know the board chair tried to sabotage his own daughter's business, we could lose millions in other pledges. The Whitmore Foundation is reconsidering too, someone said, checking their phone. They just sent an emergency board notice. My father looked around the room, seeing his carefully constructed world of influence crumbling. Every charity board, every club membership, every position of prestige, they all depended on his reputation, and I had just destroyed it with his own words. Aunt Eleanor hadn't sat back down. She stood at table 6, her voice shaking with decades of suppressed anger. Robert always did this, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Our brother Thomas, the one who ran away to London? Robert destroyed his construction business by spreading rumors that he was embezzling. He wasn't. Robert just wanted his contracts. Eleanor, stop, my father warned weakly. No, she continued. I've been quiet for 30 years. You did the same thing to Cousin Marie when she started her restaurant. Called her the family cook at every gathering until investors thought she was a joke. She lost everything. That was different, my father started. Father. And your first wife, Eleanor continued, her voice gaining strength. Wendy's mother, you told everyone she abandoned her child. But she didn't, did she? You forced her out with lawyers and threats, then painted her as unstable. I felt my chest tighten. I'd always wondered about my mother, who disappeared when I was 2. She fought for custody for 3 years, Eleanor said, looking at me with tears in her eyes. But Robert had better lawyers, more money, more connections. She died thinking you hated her, Wendy. She died thinking she'd failed you. The room was absolutely silent except for Eleanor's ragged breathing. You're lying, my father said, but his voice had no conviction. Mom kept all the court documents, Eleanor said. She kept your letters threatening to destroy anyone who helped her. I have them. I've always had them. Marcus was staring at our father like he'd never seen him before. Is this true? I wasn't special, I said quietly, echoing what everyone was thinking. I was just the latest in a long line. Family betrayal cuts deepest because it comes from those who should protect us. But here's what I learned. Their opinion of you doesn't determine your value. Your success is the best response. If you agree, hit that like button. And tell me, have you ever proved a doubter wrong? Share your victory in the comments below. My father suddenly stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His face had gone from pale to flushed with rage. "This is my grandson's wedding," he shouted. "How dare you ruin it with these lies and manipulations?" "I paid for this wedding," I said, pulling out my phone and showing the bank transfer. $327,000, paid in full 3 months ago. The wedding planner stepped forward again, nervously. "She's right, Mr. Dalton. Every vendor was paid by Ms. Dalton directly. The flowers, the catering, the venue, even the band." "You took credit for my money while calling me an embarrassment," I said. "The invitations you sent out, claiming you were hosting? I paid for those too." "This is ridiculous. The Waterford crystal everyone's drinking from? I bought it. The Dom Perignon in those glasses, my credit card, the orchids flown in from Thailand, my expense account." I pulled up receipt after receipt on my phone, displaying them for everyone to see. "Every single element of this wedding that you've been taking credit for all evening, every detail you've been preening about to your business associates, every penny came from the woman you just called the family disappointment." James stood up at the head table. "It's true. Mom paid for everything. Grandpa just insisted on sending the invitations." "You knew?" Marcus asked James, incredulous. "Of course I knew. I also know that Mom offered to pay for your wedding 5 years ago, Uncle Marcus, but Grandpa said it would be embarrassing to take money from her." The irony was so thick you could cut it with one of the Henkel's steak knives I'd also paid for. Sarah pulled out one more document from her briefcase, this one in a Nexus Holdings folder. "3 months ago," she announced, "Dalton Properties submitted a proposal to Nexus Holdings for a $500 million joint venture." Marcus's head snapped up. "That was confidential." "It became part of our records when you submitted it," Sarah replied. "The proposal was reviewed by our full board. Ms. Dalton abstained from voting due to personal connection." You saw our proposal?" my father asked me, his voice hollow. "I didn't vote on it," I said. "I recused myself. But yes, I saw it. You pitched your own daughter's company and didn't even know it." Sarah continued reading. "The board's decision was unanimous. The proposal was rejected due to, quote, serious concerns about the applicant's business ethics, particularly regarding treatment of partners and systematic undermining of potential competitors through personal attacks rather than market competition." They also noted, Sarah added, that Mr. Robert Dalton had actively attempted to sabotage the CEO of Nexus Holdings through a deliberate campaign of professional defamation, making any partnership impossible. "You cost us $500 million," Marcus said to our father, his voice cracking. "The board particularly highlighted this email," Sarah said, pulling out another paper. "Sent by Robert Dalton to the very investors Nexus Holdings was working with. Quote, my daughter's amateur ventures are an embarrassment to the Dalton name." "You sent that to our investors?" Marcus was on his feet now. "The same investors we were trying to partner with?" "The irony," I said quietly, "is that if you'd just left me alone, if you'd just ignored me like you always did, you might have gotten that deal." Marcus turned on me, his Harvard composure completely shattered. "You're destroying the family. You're destroying everything we built." "I haven't done anything to the family," I replied calmly. "Your supplier contracts with TechSource remain unchanged. Your terms are the same. Your prices are locked in for 2 more years. But, unless," I continued, "you do what Father did, publicly humiliate me, try to sabotage my business, send emails to investors calling me an embarrassment, then it's not personal anymore. Then it's just business." Marcus's wife, who had been silent all evening, suddenly spoke up. "Marcus, stop. Can't you see what's happening here? Your father created this situation." "Lauren, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Lauren shot back. I've watched him belittle Wendy for 7 years. I've sat through dinners where he praised you for deals that were half as impressive as what she was doing. I've kept quiet, but I won't anymore. She turned to me. That startup you sold 8 years ago? I looked it up after I met you. $50 million. You were 28. Marcus was still in business school, spending Dad's money. Lauren, Marcus protested. It's true, she said. Your sister built an empire while your father was calling her a failure, and you just went along with it because it benefited you. I don't use business for revenge, I said, looking directly at Marcus. But I don't do business with people who harm me. That's not revenge, that's boundaries. My father made one last desperate attempt. Everyone here knows I built this family's fortune. Who are you going to believe? This ambush? Or 40 years of Dalton legacy? He looked around the room, waiting for support. Who believes this nonsense? My father asked the room, his voice commanding despite everything. Stand with me. Show her that money can't buy respect. For a moment, nobody moved. 300 guests sat frozen, looking between my father and me. Then Richard Hammond stood up. I believe it because I signed the contracts, because I did due diligence on Nexus Holdings, because I know exactly who bought my company. Another executive stood. I believe it because my firm has been trying to identify the phantom buyer for months. We had her on our radar as a possibility, but dismissed it because her own father was telling everyone she was incompetent. One by one, people began standing, not in support of my father, but turning toward me. We've all dealt with Nexus, someone said. They're brilliant, strategic, ethical, everything Robert claims to be, but isn't. The development director from Children's Hospital stood. Ms. Dalton's donation saved our expansion. She asked for nothing in return except that we maintain high ethical standards. Even some of the family members began shifting. Uncle William, my father's own brother, stood up. I'm tired of pretending, Robert. You've been a bully our whole lives. You bullied Thomas out of the country. You bullied Marie out of business. Now you tried to bully Wendy, but she was too strong. She was too smart, Aunt Eleanor corrected. She let you think she was weak while she built something you could never touch. By the end, more than 200 people were standing, facing me rather than my father. The king had lost his court. Marcus remained seated, looking between our father and the standing crowd, paralyzed by indecision. Your father just lost the room, Richard said quietly. In business, that's everything. Sarah reached into her briefcase one last time. There's one more document, she said. An email sent yesterday at 4:47 p.m. from Robert Dalton to 47 recipients, all of whom are in this room. My father's face went gray. No, Sarah read. Keep Wendy away from the important guests at the wedding. She'll embarrass us with her presence. Seat her as far from the main table as possible. If she tries to approach any investors or business partners, intervene immediately. We can't afford to have her amateur hour damage the Dalton reputation. She looked up. This was sent 18 hours ago, after the Forbes announcement had already gone live, after the SEC filings were public, after anyone with Google could have known that Wendy Dalton was worth $2.3 billion. You still tried to humiliate her, someone said from the crowd, even after you knew? I didn't know, my father protested. Because you never bothered to Google your own daughter, I said. 20 years of success, and you never once typed my name into a search engine. That's how little you thought of me. The timestamp shows you sent this email after 3 people had already texted you about the Forbes article, Sarah added, checking her phone. You knew, you just couldn't accept it. The wedding photographer, who had been discreetly documenting everything, spoke up. I have photos of the seating chart. Ms. Dalton was deliberately placed at the overflow table, despite paying for the entire event. You planned my humiliation, I said simply. You just didn't plan for my success. The room was silent except for the sound of notifications as people's phones buzzed with news alerts. The story was already spreading. A woman at table 8 stood up holding a tablet. I'm Jennifer Walsh from Forbes. I was invited as a +1, but this is rather serendipitous. My father's eyes widened. A Forbes journalist had witnessed everything. "We're featuring Nexus Holdings and Ms. Dalton in our next issue," Jennifer continued. "The article goes live online Monday morning, but I can confirm what's already public. Wendy Dalton, net worth $2.3 billion, entirely self-made. No inheritance, no family money, no connections she didn't build herself." She turned her tablet toward the room, showing the advance copy of the article. My photo was on the mock-up cover. The headline reads, "The Phantom Billionaire: How Wendy Dalton Built a Tech Empire in Silicon Valley's Shadows." We detail her 20-year journey from a teenage single mother to one of the most powerful tech investors in America. "This can't be real," my father whispered. "We verified everything," Jennifer said. "Every acquisition, every sale, every strategic move. While you were calling her an embarrassment, Mr. Dalton, Forbes was calling her revolutionary." She scrolled down the article. "We have a particularly interesting section about how she succeeded despite active sabotage from her family. We didn't name names in the article, but—" She looked around the room. "I think we might need to update it." "You can't print that," Marcus said desperately. "I can print facts," Jennifer replied. "And the fact is, your sister built a billion-dollar empire while her own father was sending emails to destroy her reputation. That's not gossip. That's news. The best part," she added, looking directly at my father, "is the quote from one of your own investors. 'We always wondered why Robert Dalton was so intent on keeping us away from his daughter. Now we know she was the real talent in the family.'" The development director from Children's Hospital approached me, wringing her hands nervously. "Ms. Dalton, please," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Whatever happens between you and your father, please don't punish the children. That $50 million, it's for a new pediatric cancer wing." I stood up from table 12 for the first time since the revelation began. "The funding stands," I said clearly. "Every penny. Nexus Holdings doesn't punish children for adult cruelty." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you. However," I continued, "we do have requirements for our partner organizations. Board members must meet certain ethical standards. We cannot have our company associated with individuals who engage in documented patterns of emotional abuse, professional sabotage, or systematic harassment." I looked directly at my father. "Robert Dalton must resign from the hospital board, effective immediately." "You can't demand that," he protested. "I'm not demanding anything," I replied. "I'm stating the terms under which the donation proceeds. The hospital can choose $50 million for sick children or keeping a board member who publicly humiliates his own family." The hospital board chair, who was also present, stood up. "Robert, I'm sorry, but the choice is clear. We need that funding." "This is extortion." "This is consequences," I corrected. "You've spent decades using your board positions to hurt people. That ends now." "She's right," another board member said. "Robert, we've overlooked a lot over the years because of your donations, but $50 million? And now knowing what you've done, we can't keep you." "The museum board is going to have the same conversation," someone added. "So is the symphony." One by one, my father's prestigious positions evaporated. The currency of social capital he'd hoarded for decades was suddenly worthless. Sarah handed my father a thick envelope. "Mr. Dalton, this is formal notice from Nexus Holdings." He took it with shaking hands. "Effective Monday morning," Sarah announced. "Nexus Holdings and all its subsidiaries are terminating any existing partnerships with Dalton Properties. This includes preferred vendor status, joint development agreements, and all pending proposals." That's $500 million in annual revenue," Marcus said, his face white. "It's actually closer to $523 million when you factor in the secondary contracts," I corrected. "I know because I reviewed every single one." "You'll destroy us," my father said. "No," I replied. "You destroyed yourselves. I'm just no longer enabling it." Other business leaders in the room were already making calculations. If Nexus was pulling out, they'd reconsider too. Association with Dalton Properties was becoming toxic. "Hammond Industries will be reviewing our contracts as well," Richard announced. We can't partner with companies that treat family members as competitors to be destroyed. Same for Meridian Tech, another CEO added. Boston Financial Group is out too, came another voice. Within minutes, Dalton Properties had lost not just Nexus's business, but the confidence of half of Boston's business community. The empire my father had spent 40 years building was crumbling in real time. This is because of one email? My father asked desperately. This is because of hundreds of emails, I said. Years of sabotage, decades of cruelty. The emails were just evidence of who you really are. Marcus was frantically typing on his phone, probably trying to calculate if the company could survive losing half its revenue. The contracts give you 90 days to transition, Sarah added. That's more generous than required. Ms. Dalton insisted on it despite my recommendation for immediate termination. James stood up at the head table and took the microphone from the band leader. The room fell silent. I want everyone here to know something, he said, his voice strong and clear. My mother built everything she has from nothing. She was 18 years old, pregnant with me, abandoned by my father, and dismissed by her own family. He looked directly at my father. While my grandfather inherited his business from his father, my mother created hers with her own hands. While he was given every advantage, she fought for every opportunity. James, sit down, my father commanded weakly. No, James said. I've been quiet my whole life while you insulted her at every family gathering, while you gave Uncle Marcus credit for deals worth millions and dismissed Mom's billion-dollar empire as playing with computers. He turned to the room. You want to know the truth? My mother offered to pay for my Harvard education, all 4 years. My grandfather insisted on paying because he said it would be embarrassing to take money from her. Then he told everyone he was supporting us. That's not... I have the emails, grandfather. Mom saved them all. Every cruel word, every dismissal, every time you told someone she was a disappointment. She saved them not for revenge, but because she wanted me to understand that other people's opinions don't define our worth. James's voice grew stronger. I'm proud to be Wendy Dalton's son. I'm proud that she built an empire while raising me alone. I'm proud that she never once spoke badly of the family that rejected her, even when she had every right to. He looked at me, tears in his eyes. Mom, you're not the family embarrassment. You're the family hero, and everyone here knows it. My father left the wedding before the cake was cut. He walked out in silence, his empire in ruins, his reputation destroyed, his carefully maintained facade shattered. Marcus followed him, but not before approaching me. The supplier contracts, he said quietly. Will you really honor them? Submit a proposal like everyone else, I replied. Nexus evaluates all vendors on merit. We'll never get approved now. Then maybe you should have thought of that before letting Dad send those emails about me. Within an hour, I went from the overflow table to the center of the room. Business cards appeared in my hand faster than I could pocket them. 3 separate companies approached me about acquisitions before the band played their second set. Ms. Dalton, one CEO said, we've been trying to get a meeting with Nexus for months. Send the proposal to my office, I said, handing him Sarah's card. We review everything. The wedding continued without my father and Marcus. If anything, the atmosphere improved. The shadow that had hung over every family event for decades was finally gone. Lauren, Marcus's wife, approached me near the end of the evening. I'm filing for divorce, she said quietly. I've watched him turn into your father for 7 years. I won't wait for him to do to our children what Robert did to you. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. Don't be. You showed me what's possible when you refused to accept less than you deserve. By the time the last dance played, I had received 17 LinkedIn requests, 12 acquisition proposals, and 6 board position offers. In 3 hours, I went from embarrassment to most wanted business card in Boston. The Boston Globe ran the story 3 days later. Family feud cost Dalton patriarch $500 and board positions. The Wall Street Journal followed with, How Sabotaging Your Daughter Can Destroy Your Empire. Within a week, My father had lost 6 board positions, $500 million in annual contracts, 60% of his investors, his membership at 3 exclusive clubs. Any credibility in Boston's business community, Marcus's company struggled immediately. Without preferential treatment from suppliers, without the halo effect of our father's reputation, Dalton Properties revealed itself for what it was: an average company that had been coasting on inherited advantages. Their stock price dropped 40% in 5 days. Meanwhile, my phone didn't stop ringing. Every family embarrassment in America seemed to have found my story. I received thousands of messages from people who'd been dismissed, belittled, and sabotaged by their own families. "You gave me hope," one message read. "I'm 35, and my parents still introduce me as their mistake because I became a teacher instead of a doctor. Your story reminds me that their opinion doesn't define my worth." Another: "I built a successful restaurant chain while my family told everyone I was playing cook. Last week, I bought the country club that rejected me. Thank you for showing me it's okay to succeed without their approval." The Forbes article, updated with details from the wedding, became their most shared story of the year. The headline had changed. The $2.3 billion revenge that wasn't how Wendy Dalton's success exposed a family's toxic legacy. But my favorite response came from a name I hadn't seen in 30 years: Thomas Dalton, my uncle in London. "Well done, niece." Someone finally stood up to him. Uncle Thomas. 2 weeks after the wedding, a letter arrived at my office. My father's handwriting, still commanding even when asking for mercy. "Wendy, we need to talk. Despite recent misunderstandings, we're still family. I'm willing to put this behind us if you are. Family should stick together, especially in difficult times. Let's meet and discuss how to move forward. Dad." No apology, no acknowledgement of harm, just misunderstandings and a request to forget everything. Sarah read it over my shoulder. "He's lost everything. This is desperation." "This is manipulation," I corrected. "Same playbook, different day." I dictated my response. "Robert, my door is open when you're ready to apologize publicly as you humiliated me. When you're ready to acknowledge, in front of the same 300 people who heard you call me an embarrassment, that you were wrong. When you're ready to admit that you sabotaged my career, lied about my mother, and tried to destroy my business. Until then, we have nothing to discuss. And it's Ms. Dalton. You lost the right to call yourself my father when you chose cruelty over kindness." Wendy Dalton, CEO, Nexus Holdings. Sarah sent it via certified mail, signature required. The response came 2 days later through Marcus. "Dad says you're being unreasonable. He's willing to acknowledge there were mistakes on both sides." "Both sides?" I asked. "What was my side? Building a business? Succeeding despite him?" "He's lost everything, Wendy. He lost what he built on cruelty. I won't apologize for revealing the truth." Marcus hung up. We haven't spoken since. My boundaries were clear: accountability or absence. I'd accept nothing in between. 6 months have passed since that wedding. My father's empire is a shadow of what it was. Marcus's company filed for restructuring. The family that once ruled Boston's social scene has become a cautionary tale told in business schools. But here's what I learned. Success isn't revenge. I didn't build Nexus Holdings to prove them wrong. I built it because I could, because I had ideas worth pursuing and the determination to pursue them. Their opinion became irrelevant somewhere around my third acquisition. The best boundary isn't a wall, it's indifference. When you truly know your worth, you don't need anyone else to confirm it. Not your father, not your family, not the people who should have loved you but chose judgment instead. I still drive my Tesla Model 3, even though I could buy 100 Bentleys. I still live in my house in Brookline, even though I could buy my father's entire Back Bay block. These things don't define me. They never did. What defines me is that I got up every morning for 20 years and built something real. While they were talking about legacy, I was creating one. While they were protecting their inheritance, I was earning my fortune. My son James is now a doctor at Children's Hospital, the one with the new pediatric wing that Nexus funded. He introduces himself as Dr. James Dalton, Wendy Dalton's son. That's his choice, and it means everything. The Dalton family embarrassment turned out to be the only Dalton worth remembering. When you know your worth, you don't need anyone else to confirm it. That's not arrogance, that's peace. And peace, I've learned, is the ultimate success. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been the family disappointment, the one who didn't fit the mold, remember, your path doesn't need their validation. Success is the best response, but peace is the ultimate victory. Please subscribe if this resonated with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, you define your worth, no one else.